Hey there, welcome to the fourth video in our six-part series with Launch Factory. In this video, I interview Rupak Doshi. He's the CEO of OmniSync. This was the first portfolio company that Launch Factory started back in 2019. And basically the company that has the most experience through the incubation process with them. So a couple of great sort of lessons in this, and we learn about the process and about his experience of working with Launch Factory. So really interesting. Please check it out. As always, if you have any questions about Launch Factory or about Rupak in specific, my email address is on screen. Please reach out to me. All of the other contact information is available on the page, so you can always reach out to Launch Factory or Rupak directly as well. And I look forward to hearing from you if you do have any questions. Having said all of that, let's get into the interview. Rupak, thank you so much for coming on the show today and doing the interview with us. I'm really excited to learn about you and your progression over the last year and a half or so. And I know you've gotten incredible traction recently, amazing attention on your MVP. A bunch of accelerators are also interested in you. So we'll get into all of that today. But before we do, let's start with a quick intro. Tell me a little bit about yourself and your educational background and how you sort of discovered the entrepreneurial journey.
Sure, and thanks a lot for inviting me over. So I was born and raised in India, Calcutta, and did my undergrad over there. My undergrad was in biotech. From there, I actually spent 1 year starting a company, and it was in the consumer biotech space in India, in Calcutta as well. And at the end of that year, that company actually had a little bit of an exit where we actually sold our IP to a firm over there that was going to then commercialize and manufacture it in a large scale. Nice. So I considered that to be a small win.
Of
and
course.
The first time I tasted success from the entrepreneurial world. And then from there, I basically thought that I wanted to get a little more education before I dive in deeper into the entrepreneurial space. So I went to England and pursued a master's in translational medicine from Manchester. And then following that, I actually wanted to do a little bit more. And so I went and did a PhD at Cambridge, which was awesome, right? Being in the university amongst really, really smart people, Nobel laureates left, right, and center. It was very, very nice to be in that environment. But in those 3 years, I became very, very aware that my interests definitely lied in making stuff that people actually use versus like researching on stuff that basically just falls into the realm of basic sciences.
Right.
And so then while looking for the next thing after Cambridge, I thought that I would look for an opportunity that would allow me to then continue researching, but towards a product that could be applied outside of universities, right? So then I got an offer from the US at the Scripps Research Institute of doing a postdoc on a project that was in the biofuel space and combined with antibodies. And so both of those are very industrial topics, and so gave me great opportunity to basically work on something that's very relevant to the applied space. And so I came here to San Diego, did a postdoc for about 4 years at TSRI and then UCSD, and then used that knowledge base to then actually work for a biotherapeutic startup.
Okay.
So I joined them as employee number 30 or so. And then in the 3 years I was there, we scaled to over 90 people and the company went public last year.
Oh, wow.
So again, that was the second taste of good success at a very mature, biotech startup that was going really nicely.
Yeah.
In the meanwhile, I also was a founder of another consumer biotech company from UCSD, which was a spin-off from a couple of people. Actually, my current co-founder and I did that same one.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He was interning with me in the lab at the time. And so we did that, and that actually ended up in 3 years. It ended up having customers like the Levi Stadium and the military, which again to us was phenomenal. Out of nowhere, getting a customer that hosts the Super Bowl, and I think 60,000 of our units were given to all the fans at the Super Bowl at Levi Stadium.
Wow.
And that was pretty amazing for a 5-person startup working out of an apartment.
Wow. That's amazing.
It was really cool to get to that stage.
Yeah.
again, like so I've had some successes in the entrepreneurial spirit,
Yeah.
but if you think about it, most of these were either side gigs or they weren't done with a complete, all-in mentality, right?
Right.
I was still doing something along the lines of career, science, research, all that stuff. So last year, then when I came across Launch Factory's opportunity, I was like, you know what? This is it. I'm at the right time in my life. I've done enough in my life in terms of background to now have confidence that I can actually build something really cool, ground up, full time. And I want to be a serial entrepreneur. I was very
Awesome.
clear about that because I had done everything else,
Yeah.
and I knew that nothing else was going to give me as much joy as doing this. And so then, kicked into it full time, and so here we are after a year.
Fantastic. No, that's such a great story. And that being part of 3 successful startups, that's the best way to sort of get you in that mindset and get you ready for your own startup. So that's fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about how you sort of found Launch Factory and what that recruitment process was like, and what it was like to sort of meet Brad and James and these guys and sort of learn their system.
Yeah, so I saw their post on San Diego Union Tribune
Okay.
the day of the deadline.
Oh, wow.
It was phenomenal. It was almost fate, right? Like I basically flipped up my phone. I was going through stuff, and I was not Googling startup studios. It was not on my keywords,
Right.
But somehow that thing showed up, on my feed, and I saw it in the morning of the deadline, and I was like, this sounds pretty awesome because of two things. One, it was a studio that was basically giving funding to a startup before it got started. Extremely rare to find, and I was at the stage in my life where I could not completely go off of a salary, right? So I needed something to get started with.
Right.
At least it would have been much nicer to be able to do that, and this was an opportunity to do that. Secondly, I thought their concept was the most unique I've seen so far. I didn't know too much about startup studios before Launch Factory, but I knew incubators where you take your idea to them and you ask for space, money, mentorship, whatever, right?
Right.
But it has to be your idea. You have had to have worked on it for a while or whatever, and then you take it to them. This was very different because they were saying that, we have a core concept of a business. We think we want to get really good entrepreneurs who are not married to a particular idea, right? And we're going to give them support to give them a good head start to launch and run a company successfully.
Right.
So the way I read it, I was like, this is written for me, there's no better way to write a job description for me, because I was like, I've done startups in different spaces completely unrelated, products. With my background, it's like the only startup that I would start, right, with my background at the time, it would have been something in the therapeutic space, which would take a long, long time to come to fruition. Right. So I was like, I wanted to get the startup, experience very, very quickly. And this seemed to be a really good strategy moving forward. So I sent it to Norman pretty much right then and there because he and I have always been in touch for a while now.
Okay.
And anything entrepreneurial we kind of have always chatted about. And so I sent it to him. He thought exactly the same thing. He was like, yep, tailor written for us. I was like, okay, well, the deadline's tonight. He was like, yeah, we'll do it. No worries.
Okay.
So then he applied for it. And I still had band practice in the evening.
Oh, wow.
And so I didn't get to it till 11 p.m. at night, and the deadline was midnight.
Right.
And then they had in the application, they had a 45-minute personality test. I was like, are you kidding me? And Norman was like, I told you it's going to be hard. So there I was at 11:50 p.m. or something like that, hitting the submit button. Submitted, we got the call, and then we went through it. And somehow, without none of us being actual software developers by training, we pulled it off and we won.
Fantastic.
In competition with others who were hardcore software developers.
Right. And you guys were the first people that Launch Factory sort of committed to, right?
We're their first company.
Nice.
Yeah,
so that's exciting.
Yep.
Let's talk about your competition in that process because I'm really curious about that. You said you beat out hardcore software developers in developing a software product, right? So tell me how you did that and how you managed to win.
Yeah, so the Launch Factory's model is they give you a concept during the founder's recruitment process for you to work on and to show them your vision for the business.
Right.
Right. So the concept we had was that let's build a software that small businesses can use to find operational resources like CPAs, lawyers, stuff like that.
Yeah.
We took that concept and we were like, you know what? There's no way we can we do justice to this project, to this startup, if we don't basically bring in something that we actually have experience with. There's no way we can do that. So we actually then took that, and what we proposed to Launch Factory was that, fine, we'll investigate this, but what we'll start with is startups, because we've done those in the past. We know the space,
Right.
and we'll start with life sciences because we're life science professionals. We know their space, we know their problems, and they have the same operational needs that small businesses would have as well, except it's just tailor made for startups.
Right.
And we showed that vision to them, and turns out that no other competitor of ours thought of molding their idea to make it so customized to their like how they would do it. And so we were able to show them literally how the business is going to run in the next year if we would run it. And we even built a little mock, prototype of the software overnight, pretty much. And Norman was instrumental in doing that, by the way. I wouldn't have known ABC the way to start with that. But we did that, and we showed them an app basically that they could click around, and
Right.
and the first time judges were like, I could see it work.
Right.
You see it right there in front of you. It's real now. It's not fiction anymore.
Right.
And so that's why I think we were able to beat out everybody else who applied, because
Nice.
we took it and made it our own right from day one. Because we were like, there's just no point trying to pretend to be someone that we're not.
Right.
We won't be able to pull it off.
Right.
So
No, that's fantastic,
why we
and
won.
I love this idea that you're given a very broad mandate,
Yeah.
and you sort of figure out your niche, your lane
Yeah.
in that, and you sort of go after that. So that's fantastic, and congratulations. So your co-founder, essentially your partner, is Norman,
Yeah.
right? And you guys decided to sort of split up the working titles as you CEO and him being the COO, right? So tell me how that decision went, or that conversation went.
Yeah, that was actually very, very straightforward, because
Okay.
for the longest time we've known each other. We know each other's strengths very well.
Fantastic.
Before we do anything, it's already obvious to both of us who's going to do what.
Right.
Is that like our partnership works that well?
Yeah.
Thank the touch wood, thankfully. And so he's not as much of a COO as he is of a CTO.
Okay.
So the way, and I am not as much of I'm not as much of a COO either, as much as I am of a CEO,
Right.
because I'm more of a vision person. I like talking to people. I like money. I like fundraising, all that stuff, right? So
Right.
it's all the stuff that CEOs do. And I like customer feedback. I like improving things for customers. And Norman loves technologies. He loves building cool stuff. He likes sourcing cool stuff.
Nice.
He likes trying new things. So it's a very
Right.
clear distinction there of skill sets. And so I'm the CEO. I would say he's a CTO.
Okay.
And both of us basically are a 50-50 COO.
Okay.
And we basically fill up the CEO role together.
Right. Right.
That's more of how we look at it.
Got it.
But yeah, Launch Factory kind of expects one person to be CEO, one person to be COO. So we just
Right.
threw those titles on there.
Fantastic. Yeah, in the startup world, everyone's doing everything, and
Yep.
it's great to have a partner that you sort of know exactly their strengths and weaknesses,
Absolutely.
right?
That's one of the big reasons why we won the
Yeah.
competition, was because Norman and I knew each other and have worked with each other for a while.
Right.
Some of the other teams had found the partners at the time. Some of them were couples, so I don't see
wow.
that going very well.
Yeah, that might be hard to turn off the business at night. Yeah.
So I think we had the right team and the right idea to be able to pull this off.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, there's no way I could have done this without him. There's
Right.
just no chance in ever,
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. No, great. So let's talk about what happened afterwards. So now you guys won, you're in Launch Factory. What does that first 3 to 6 months look like? Because I'm sure it's sort of head down,
Yep.
focus, start executing. So talk to us about that.
Yeah. So we started on Labor Day.
Great.
So we'll come to work Labor Day, the best day to start a business. And the first 2 days, I think, were all just discussing at the table. Brad, James, Norman, and myself, just brainstorming every single aspect of what the core idea was that Launch Factory gave us, and how we molded it, and whether that still makes sense or not after a time period that's gone by, right?
Right.
So it's all about circling up back to the same page, everyone, like thinking about all the different aspects of it. So it's Launch Factory's incubation process, the 1st 3 days that you go through. And then after that, you go through a couple of weeks of just due diligence planning to make sure that you have a plan of testing each and every assumption that you've made throughout your business plan creation.
Right.
And that involves a lot of secondary research as well. But also, I took that a step further. Both Norman and I actually have in our pasts gone through the NSF I-Core program. I actually went through the NIH I-Core program. But I-Core, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but
No,
basically
right.
it's a program that is pioneered by a person called Steve Blank in the Bay Area. And it is extremely heavy on customer discovery efforts. So, the concept of that is that you basically you go to a potential customer that you think is a potential customer, and you don't tell them what you have.
Right.
You basically talk to them about their day-to-day stuff, what the problems they have on a day-to-day basis, their jobs, what they're doing, and stuff like that. And you basically at the end tell them that, you know what, that's really cool, thanks a lot, and we'll get back to you if we can find a solution for you or something like that. And then you go through that a number of times with a number of potential, customers, and then at the end, what you have is a consensus on what the problem in the industry is, and then you take that judgment call of whether your solution actually meets that or not. You don't you don't tell the customer what your solution is and ask them, does this work for you or not?
Right.
So it's somewhat reversed in that.
Interesting, yeah.
And we feel very strongly about that because I think it gets you the best unbiased information about customer persona and how they view problems and solutions and stuff like that.
Right.
And so we did that. So we took it a step further than Launch Factory's standard incubation process, and we did that for almost 3 months.
Oh, wow.
And so we almost spoke to upwards of 140 potential customers, advisors, key stakeholders in the space, all the vendor partners, who are serving the segment.
Right.
So pretty much gathering information from every single angle that we could about the space
Right.
to really understand what the key problems were that people were having. And this was I remember quite a few times, James and Brad were like, guys, you're doing this way too much. You're doing way too much of this, way too much talking to people. But both Norman and I really believe very strongly about that. And so we did that. But as a result of that, basically after the 3 months, we in 1 month, we knew exactly what we wanted to do. We launched an MVP in 1 month very quickly. And in 2 months, we had our first revenue right there and then.
Wow.
So we were so we knew exactly, we had cracked the code right there because we had done a lot of work up front to make sure that when we actually do something, it's something that people really want.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how the first 6 months went. We actually went through due diligence, we launched an MVP, we got traction, we got customers, and they were paying us.
That's a successful 6 months. That's awesome. There's so many things in there that we could sort of touch on and sort of dig into a little bit more. Yeah. But I'm really interested in sort of what that discovery process was like, right? So at the end of the first 3 months, what became clear to you that, okay, this has to be our niche and has to be something we go after? So what was that like?
Yeah, so like I said, the original idea was to help startups and small businesses with operational needs, right? So when we started doing the customer discovery of trying to see what their problems were in terms of operations with startups, they started talking to us about operations, but in no time, almost, they would always go towards funding as a problem.
Funding, yep.
In no time, no matter where we started the discussion with, it landed at funding.
Yeah.
And so we saw that and we were like, you know what? Even if they don't think that operations is a problem for them, and if they feel fundraising or funding for them is the problem and they need that before any operational help at all, even if you come up with the best product in the world for operational help, they're not going to buy it.
It's not
if
gonna
they
work.
don't see the problem, they're not going to buy it, even if it's the best thing for them. Even if we know, even if advisors and experts out there, if they all tell them that, look, this is good for you, do it, there's no way they're going to take it and pay up for it. Because at the end, they're the ones who are writing the check, right? They're the ones who are hitting the credit card button. So we were like, you know what? I think it makes much more sense to start with providing some help on the fundraising and then layer in all the operational support that they need to support this overall mission of getting funded and becoming a real company.
Right.
So we then tweaked our entire model around that. And so we then started talking to them about fundraising problems, what were the problems and all that. So the first half of the customer discovery effort was finding out that they don't care about operations.
Yeah.
And the second half was trying to find out what they do really care about,
Right,
and pushing
right.
hard on what would it be that would solve their problem, trying to predict that. And so we then figured out very quickly that there was funding available from the government for them that they knew about, but they thought it was a mammoth effort to go through and apply for it. And then we were like, okay, what is that problem? Why is it such a hard issue? And then we figured out that the industry was lacking a tool
Right.
to help them do it better and easier in an easier way. And I was like, right, that's it. That's our product right there.
Fantastic.
So we had the need, we had the customer demand. They were very willing to try it out if we built it,
Right.
all that stuff. So we had all the necessary ingredients to build an MVP that they would use, and it worked well that they started paying us for it.
Fantastic. And I totally understand the funding need. That's essentially what Startup Steroids is all about
Exactly,
too, right?
right?
So no, and that's fantastic. So now let's switch over to OmniSync and talk about what the actual product was, the MVP that you guys developed. And I understand that you're helping businesses with grants and government funding, non-dilutive, obviously. So what does the product look like? What does that MVP look like? And how do you actually form a business around it?
Yeah. So what we do is help startups get non-dilutive funding at the very early stages, at a stage where they have probably just a concept, they haven't built their prototype, or even if they have built it, it's a crappy looking one or something like that.
Right.
They have very little to no traction at all. And for that reason, they have no interest from investors.
Yeah.
That's usually the stage that most startups will die before they become interesting to anybody.
Yep.
And that's the stage we want to help, because that's the stage that needs that help.
Yeah.
And then we basically paired that stage of startups with a government program that is designed to specifically fund that stage of startups, which is the SPIR, Small Business Innovation Research Program. So that's the program from the government that basically awards grants and contracts to startups, small businesses, but small businesses that are conducting innovative R&D towards a commercial product. So to me, that's the definition of a startup.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
So we were like, so that's what the product. So our MVP was guiding startups on what these grants are, how to apply for them, prepare an application package through the document set that you need to go through, connect with resources if you need help in actually preparing those documents, and then finally go through a submission process and then track what's happening to your grant. That was the core concept that we sold to our MVP customers. And everything else on our platform was add-ons. So while you're going through this process, if you need an HR support system, then here's a partner who you can work with. And so we had everything else on our platform, everything from incorporation through back office support, through financial tools, bookkeeping stuff, IP help. All of the other stuff was arranged through our trusted vendor partners, who I had basically lined up during my customer discovery effort.
Okay, perfect.
So we had all of that through links to our partners who are providing good deals and workflow execution through our platform and stuff like that. So our MVP was basically a very, very quick hacked together website, which was faked with UI to make it look like an app.
Okay.
And that's why we did it very, very quickly, because the goal was get something into people's hands as quickly as possible for them to see if that could solve their problem before we figure out how to solve our problem of managing a lot of customers. So that's usually an app, between an app and a website, right? An app basically has more bells and whistles for you to manage a large scale. So scalability, is what the app gives you. But everything on an app you can pretty much do on a website too, on WordPress, if you don't want the scale.
Right.
And that's where we were, right? We didn't care about the scale at the time. We cared more about solving the customer's problem.
Right.
So very quickly, in a month, we put together the WordPress, made it look like an app that you can click through, and it has pop-ups and stuff here and there. And it helped, startups go through grants, apply for them, and it had these other things that they can do if they needed help from other parts of their startup.
Right.
And that worked really well. It like we thought that was going to be a pilot that we would run for 2 months. We rode it out for 9 months. It was working so well.
Fantastic. And you started generating revenue, right? What more could you ask for?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, if this is working right now, if we're not needing to do anything else, I'm not going to touch it. It's going to work. We're going to get a ton of data on how customers are using it, what do they really want, so that when we actually build out our app, we know exactly which feature to add, where to add it. We know everything about it. There's no follow-up discovery efforts to go through iterative rounds of app, V1 and V100.
Right.
Before you get to an actually launchable V1.
Right. So. No, that's fantastic. And that's great. So 6 to 9 months well spent. Now you sort of have all of the data that you need. Now you're developing your real product, right? Which is Turbo SBR. Turbo SBR. Tell me what that's like, and you're working with teams offshore now, because now you have to bring in professionals who sort of you can't just hack something together. So tell me what that process is like, and working with offshore teams and things like that.
Yeah, so we have an offshore team in India that we work with, and they work pretty well for us. We have a very senior developer in the US, in San Diego actually, who works for us. To help us with architecture and stuff like that.
Okay.
And code reviews and things like that. So we wanted that QA in-house here in San Diego to make sure that everything that's been done offshore has a very, very close eye from a very senior person.
Right.
We have the offshore dev team that's working with us in combination with our senior person here in San Diego. Who's overseeing the code review, implementation of features and all. And Norman is basically handling all of the development, overseeing all of it, bug fixes, code reviews, all of that. He's overseeing all of it. And the product in itself is essentially designed like a TurboTax. It's essentially a TurboTax style software for you to DIY your SBIR grant. So the analogy we make is there was a time, a decade, 2 decades ago, where people could not do their own taxes without hiring a CPA.
Right.
And you were paying CPAs thousands of dollars, right, at the time. And it was all very manual. There was documents being emailed back and forth as attachments.
Yeah.
And it was very cumbersome for anyone to do. TurboTax. And for this reason, even the IRS was losing a bunch of money because everyone was doing the taxes wrong, basically.
Right.
And so the IRS basically had this partnership that they created called Free to File, with software developers like TurboTax, Intuit, H&R Block, Tax Act, all these tax layer, all these different companies. They partnered with the IRS, and the IRS said, you know what, software companies, create a product that the customers can so that consumers can actually use themselves to file their taxes properly, so that we don't lose all of this money. In a year or so, it turned out that over 95% or something like that of US national consumers all use tax prep software now.
Right.
So we see the SBIR industry as being at the stage where tax industry was before TurboTax came in. Right now, everyone applies for SBIR grants either through consultants, where they're going back and forth with emails and attachments, or at the max, they're using Google Drive. They're working with their teams. And the information about what needs to get done and how needs to get done is spread out between 20 different websites, all run by the government, so you can imagine how they are. And so the analogy we make is this is like filing your own taxes, but now in 15 different countries.
Right.
So think about that, and now it actually involves a component where you have to propose an R&D plan of what you're actually going to build.
Right.
In addition to filling out forms and stuff. So that's how complicated the industry was. So the V1 that we're launching is very clear. It's basically the TurboTax for this industry, and it has a workflow that startups go through. You basically do not need to Google anything at all, even the word SBIR, to be able to go through our platform and complete a highly successful SBIR grant. And that's the value proposition.
Fantastic.
Minimal time spent, minimal effort, yet high quality, because we've already helped startups win grants, and the most budget-friendly option available for them. Other than if they want to do it themselves and spend hours and hours researching on stuff, which they can do for free. It's their time at that point.
No, but you're absolutely right. In the pricing model, you had consultants who were charging thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Or you could do it yourself for free, but you're essentially on YouTube for months. Yeah. So now this is a sort of a middle ground where they can pay a small fee and essentially get walked through the entire process, right?
Exactly.
Fantastic. So is the product out now, or is it coming out very soon?
So our V1 app has two components to it.
Okay.
One is people can search for grants as much as they want, and it's a very comprehensive database of all government grants available, but with a UI UX that is orders of magnitude better than any grant search engine out there. And we say this with a lot of confidence because we've tried every single one, and our customers have tried every single one, and we know.
Right.
So that's available already, and people can go on to turboSPR.com and search away as much as they want. It's free. There's no credit card even needed to sign up.
Fantastic.
So that's already available. And then the second component is the actual preparation of grants, and that's launching on November 1. So we'll have a way for startups to not just find new grants all the time, but also click on apply and actually start working on them as much as they want. So the monthly subscription fee, the standard one that we have, it's for unlimited grants. You can write as many, try as many as you want. It's really cool. And it's got team grant management and team management features where they can assign different things to different people. And it's all included. So we made it very, very affordable, budget friendly, because we work with startups, right?
Right,
so
exactly.
Have to
and there's no back end fees, because I know a lot of consultants generally charge a success fee and things like that.
Yeah, so we don't like that model at all, the whole success fee model. I know consultants try that, and some startups like that just because they think that the consultants will then be aligned with their goal or whatever, because they get paid if the grant money comes in or whatever. But if you think about it, these are taxpayer dollars, right? The government is awarding money to startups. They are taxpayer dollars, and they are intended for startups to develop a product.
Absolutely.
The component of the budget that these consultants ask for as a success fee or whatever is actually labeled as a profit fee for a startup. So it's basically the portion of a grant that you're asking the government to pay you as a profit for you as a for-profit company doing the work. Right. So as a startup, you're getting money. Every other dollar and cent of the grant, you will have to justify how you spent it on developing your product.
Right.
This is the only component of a grant that you're given as a profit fee for your startup that you can then do something with outside of product development. You can use it on getting benefits. You can use it on marketing. You can use it on IP. You can use it on anything pretty much.
Yeah.
And that's the component that these consultants ask for as a success fee. We believe that's absolute BS.
Yeah.
Because these are taxpayer dollars that should be given to they are intended for startups. They should go to the startups, not to people who help startups apply for grants or whatever. That's an easier way to do it, and that's a service that you're providing. That service, if the startup chooses to take that service, the startup needs to pay for that service. It's a very straight, simple fee-for-service model.
Fantastic. And I love the mission alignment there too, because you're going back to your mission with each step and each fees, each service that you provide. So that I love that. That's fantastic. So tell me, let's talk about the next 6 to 12 months. And November 1st is very close, so I'm guessing most of the work is already done. So tell me what the go-to-market strategy is, and what sort of customer traction you're expecting.
Yeah, so we right now have upwards of 100 startups on our platform already. We weren't expecting the numbers, absolutely not. But thankfully, we grew very fast, very quickly. Just as a benchmark, I think we're at over. I mean, even before we launched our V1, even with our MVP, we were growing over 10% or 11% week over week growth.
Wow. Okay.
Just for context, YC companies are told that they're doing well if they grow at 5% or 7% week over week. So over the 9-month period. So that's what we were growing at, and phenomenally. And in 3 days, again, we basically more than doubled our user base. As soon as we launched our V1, people were dying to just get it. So we basically more than doubled overnight, pretty much.
Wow.
So that's where we are right now. And like you said, most of the app development has been done, although bug fixes never stop.
Yep, absolutely.
So that will keep happening. And we will keep adding more and more grant workflows for each and every grant possible. So we do want to become the absolute hub in the US for all grants and contracts. Like we want startups, but then we want academics, we want small business contractors, we want every single person asking for any kind of money to the government to be on our platform and applying for that through our platform.
Absolutely.
Because we think it's the best way of applying for it. It's the most convenient way and the most streamlined, most budget friendly, and most affordable, I think, bang for the buck wise.
Right.
So that's what our next 12 months are about, capturing and really owning the startup space for SBIRs, and then expanding beyond that to other industries that absolutely need these tools very badly because they're even more backward. I mean, startups are actually really great at adopting new technologies, but imagine other industries like government contractors and universities who are even slower.
Yeah, education is way behind.
Yeah, and especially in the current day and age where everything is work from home, right? So our tool is absolutely built for that with inbuilt video, audio calling, and team management and chat and all that stuff. So it's absolutely built for multi-level team collaborations between different organizations.
Fantastic.
So that's what our next 12 months will look like. We have our go-to-market strategy very well laid out. We partner with a lot of entrepreneurial organizations, law firms. We have investor groups, and everybody basically who would benefit from their startups doing well likes to send us their startups because we essentially are creating good startups for them.
Fantastic, yeah.
So.
No, it sounds like you're well on your way, and you're doing it the right way. You're putting all the right pieces in place. So I'm really excited, and you're also getting a ton of interest from a lot of different accelerators that now you're sort of wanting to be part of. Tell me a little bit about that. Who have you sort of connected with? I understand you went to an interview yesterday, so tell us a little bit about that. And I think that might be really interesting to some of the investors.
Yeah, it's like in the middle of our product development launch and all that, we have to always, like as a CEO, you never stop fundraising, right? And you never stop looking at what's next and what's the new opportunity. And so we think we're at the right stage of being in 2 or 3 very high-profile different accelerators that have their own, user bases and focus areas. Because we think it's time that we start expanding in those sorts of ways. So, for example, we applied to Y Combinator for this winter batch, and we actually got invited for an interview. That happened yesterday.
Fantastic.
Which went okay. And that was so Y Combinator, about 10,000 or 30,000 companies or so apply, right, for each batch, and I think they invite only about a couple hundred, 300. From those for the interview.
So just being part of the interview means you're in the top 1%.
It was huge. It was huge for us.
Fantastic.
And this is the first time. Like most startups apply every single batch for 5 or 7 times before they get to that stage.
Right.
This was our first year in business. First shot, we got through.
Fantastic.
That was one. And YC gives us a credibility in terms of the startup space, and they have a huge startup community, right? That could benefit from being aware.
Ton of customers for you, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Of us being around. That's one. We also applied for Techstars this year, and that we got invited for a call after that, which also went pretty well. And then we already got accepted into Evo Nexus, which is the premier startup accelerator in Southern California, and now they actually have a Bay Area entity as well. And we have fantastic mentors from Evo Nexus. Wow, their CVs are pretty something.
Right.
But we already got into that. Again, first shot, we were actually fast-tracked into getting in because, again, I think people seem to love what we have because we are helping startups, and all of these groups have startups. I think it's a pretty cool space to be in.
Exactly.
We not only are valuable ourselves to them, but we're also valuable to the rest of their portfolio.
Exactly.
So that went really well. And there's also another accelerator/VC firm in Texas called Realco, who partners with Geekdom Fund, which is the VC there. That was really excited. They actually had personal experience of going through SPRs themselves.
Oh
And for
wow.
them,
Okay.
and so they immediately got it within like 1 minute. I didn't have to explain to them anything. They're like,
Right.
totally get it, have been through it, have experienced it, nightmare,
Right.
really love it.
Yeah.
So that went really well. So we have a follow-up calls with them now.
Fantastic.
But yeah, that's how it's been going. It's been going really well. Like very happy to see that what we thought we built in the best possible way,
Yep.
other people actually see it the same way. It's very nice and very validating for our model, right? Like the
Absolutely.
way we think the startups should be, formed. The way we think that startups should be developing their products, going about customer discovery, the way everything has to happen,
Yep.
or should happen for the best possible outcome. It's nice to see other people actually also seeing that.
Absolutely, and I'm sure every investor out there right now is, watching this and thinking about their portfolio and like where you can add value. Non-dilutive funding, sign me up, right?
It's amazing. A lot of investors have heard about non-dilutive funding and grants, but they never quite understand how big an impact it can
Yeah,
make to
absolutely.
their cap table.
Absolutely.
Right? It's basically someone telling you that for every dollar you put into your company, there's the government who's going to give you $0.50
Right.
without taking any portion of your shares. Wouldn't you want that?
Right. Absolutely. Why not?
So it's pretty. So we get quite a few customers of ours who basically are investors, send them to us. Sometimes they even pay for them. They're like, we'll pay for them to use their platform.
Right.
just do it.
Right.
So again, very fortunate to be in a space where we're not only valuable ourselves, but we provide value to everybody else in the community too.
Absolutely. No, this is fantastic, and it was such a pleasure, sort of learning more about you, talking to you about your company and about what sort of your plan is for the future. I'm so excited for you, and thank you so much for coming on today. And I look forward to all the success.
Thank you so much, and we hope to keep building on greatness.
Absolutely. That was great. I want to thank Rupak for that interview and for bringing us into his world. If you have any questions for Rupak or for myself, my email address is on screen. Please reach out to me directly. We also have all of the contact information for Rupak as well as all of the folks at Launch Factory on the page. So you can always get in touch with us through that. Um, uh, I invite you to join the next interview, which is with Alex of Productified, which is a portfolio company for Launch Factory, started in 2020, so this year. He's amazing. He also has a great story, so please check that out. And I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.